Hallelujah. You can be seated in the presence of the Lord. Give the Lord a hand clap. Hallelujah. I know that a lot of you are wondering why I'm dressed like this, being that I am the speaker for this general session. Well, God instructed me to do something different today that's going to change the way you think about yourself, your ministry, your family, difficult situations, or whatever it may be that's keeping you from fulfilling God's plan and purpose for your life, or that's keeping you from maximizing your potential. Some of you, he told me to dress like this in order to illustrate to you not long ago how I felt and how some of our ministers and peoples in our churches are at in their lives right now. He told me to entitle this message, Bleeding While Leading. It's time to heal now. It's time to walk in your season. My text is Isaiah 53:5. He was wounded for our transgression. He was bruised for our iniquity. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. He also gave me Psalms 31:5. My times are in your hands, O Lord. Some of you who are here today, you are pastoring big, some medium or some small-sized churches, while others of you are leading parachurch ministries, ministering in Bible colleges or universities, and others are missionaries or evangelists or teachers or working some type of leadership in your church, but you are bleeding while you are leading. This bleeding is caused by a variety of different things. They stem from frustration and discouragement and despondency and depression, and from disappointments of ministry and church hurts. How many of you know we got a lot of people in society today that used to be in the church that are not there because of church hurts? For some, your bleeding has been caused by loneliness in the ministry because of lack of fellowship of others in the ministry to fellowship with. For some, your bleeding has to do with your marriage being in shambles or other family problems. For some, your bleeding has to do with your financial difficulties. For some, your bleeding has to do with being burned out, disillusioned, and you're just dry. For some, your bleeding has to do with the cares of this life. For some, your bleeding has been inflicted on you by others. And for some, your wounds are self-inflicted. And there are a host of other things. Because of this, some of you are restless and dissatisfied. You have gotten to the point that you don't know what God's will for your life right now is. That's because you feel tired and unfulfilled. As a matter of fact, your bleeding while leading has you to the point of thinking like the psalmist in his time of difficulty. Even though he was close to God, but he was in a season of his life when he wanted to escape from the problems and the pressures of life. And he said in Psalms 55 verses 4 through 8, my heart is in anguish within me. The terrors of death assails me. Fear and trembling has beset me. Horror has overwhelmed me. I said, oh, that I had the wings of a dove. I would fly away and be at rest. I would fly away and stay in the desert. I would hurry to a place of shelter, far from the tempest and storm. How many of you know that bleeding can be a very dangerous thing? That's because life is in the blood. Leviticus 17:11 says, for the life of every creature is in the blood. In other words, since blood in the body represents life, shed blood represents life poured out, that is death. You see, church, bleeding causes us to lose vital fluids of blood in order to maintain our health. The average adult has about 5 liters of blood living inside of their body, coursing through their vessels, delivering essential elements and removing harmful wastes. Without blood, the human body would stop working. From a medical standpoint, blood is the fluid of life, transporting oxygen from the lungs to the body tissues and carbon dioxide from body tissues to the lungs. Not only is that, but blood is the fluid of growth, transporting nourishment from digestion and hormones from glands throughout the body. And blood is the fluid of health, transporting disease-fighting substances to the tissues and waste to the kidneys. You see, church, bleeding can cause you bruises. Bleeding can cause you to go into shock. Bleeding can cause paleness. Bleeding can cause clammy skin. Bleeding can cause dizziness or lightheadedness after an injury. Bleeding can cause rapid pulse and increased heart rate. Bleeding can cause low blood pressure. Bleeding can cause shortness of breath. Bleeding can cause confusion or decreasing alertness. Bleeding can cause weakness and a lot of other health problems. For some of you, your spiritual blood count is low. Therefore, causing your mind and your will and your emotions not to be able to function effectively in following God's will for your life. This has been a problem for so many people for centuries, even in the Bible times. That's because all through the Bible we can find great men of God that at some point in their lives they begin to spiritually bleed while they were leading. Some examples are Moses, Elijah, and King Saul. Let's talk about Moses briefly. Moses experienced frustration with the children of Israel while leading them or attempting to lead them to the promised land that caused him to bleed while he was leading. Numbers 20 tells us that he was frustrated with them to the point that when God told them to speak to the rock in order to bring forth water for the children of Israel, out of anger, he struck the rock twice. This caused Moses to disobey God and disqualify himself from leading the children of Israel into the promised land. Men and women of God, if you're not careful, you will be like Moses. You will disqualify yourself from certain levels of accomplishments in your ministry if you don't allow God to heal you of your bleeding while you are leading. Also, the Bible tells us in 1 Kings chapter 19 that discouragement and depression and fatigue crept in on the prophet Elijah after his greatest victory over the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. The temporary bleeding started after Jezebel responded to him in 1 Kings chapter 19 verse 2, saying, "May the gods deal with me, be it so ever severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life that of one of them." Elijah responded by running for his life, and he said in verse 19 of that same chapter, "I have enough, Lord." He said, "Take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors." Once again, men and women of God, you have to be careful that you don't allow your hope, your labor, and struggles of your ministry to seem to appear as if it's falling apart because things may not be going the way that you want them to go in this season. And it has you fatigued and wanting to give up. That's because discouragement and disappointments and frustration and fatigue has complicated your recovery. And if you don't allow God to heal you of your bleeding while you are leading, you're in trouble. And in 1 Samuel chapter 18, jealousy caused King Saul to bleed while he was leading. That's because Saul's appreciation for David, who had just saved his army of a terrible defeat, turned to jealousy as people began to applaud David's exploits. Saul has slain his